You woke up this morning to an alarm. Before your eyes were fully open, a small rectangle in your hand had already told you what to do next. There were emails, a calendar, a list of tasks that will not finish themselves. And somewhere under all of it, a quiet, familiar pressure that has followed you for as long as you can remember. The feeling that you are behind. The feeling that the day is a thing to be survived. You think this is just what being alive costs. But the real answer is far stranger. For almost the entire span of human existence, none of this existed. No jobs, no bosses, no deadlines, no 40-hour weeks, and no weekends to recover from them. For roughly 300,000 years, your species walked the earth without a single one of the structures you now believe are unavoidable. And the question that should keep you up at night is not how they survived without work. It is what they did with all the time you no longer have. So picture it. The sun is rising over a savanna tens of thousands of years ago. There is no clock. There is no schedule. What, exactly, does an ancient human do all day? For a long time, we assumed we knew the answer. We imagined them miserable. We pictured a brutal, desperate scramble, every waking hour spent clawing food out of a hostile world, dropping dead by 30. The phrase people used was almost a reflex. Nasty, brutish, and short. It felt obvious. It felt like the reason we invented everything else. We built farms and cities and offices to escape that horror. Then, in the 1960s, an anthropologist decided to actually check. His name was Richard Borshay Lee, and instead of guessing, he went to live among the Jew/Hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert. These were foragers, hunter-gatherers, living much the way humans had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, in one of the harshest landscapes on the planet. If the old story were true, if foraging life were a constant war against starvation, this desert was where you would see it most clearly. So Lee did something almost no one had bothered to do. He counted. He followed people and recorded exactly how many hours they spent finding and preparing food. And the number he found broke the story completely. It was about 15 hours a week. Not 15 hours a day. 15 hours a week. 2, maybe 3 hours of actual work in a typical day, and the rest of it was theirs. In a desert, with no technology you would recognize. These people were not clinging to survival. They were, by any honest measure, working part-time. Sit with that. You work more in 2 days than they did in a week. Lee's mentor, an anthropologist named Marshall Solins, took this discovery and gave it a name that turned everything upside down. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Affluent. Wealthy. Not because they had a lot of things, but because they wanted very little and got it easily. Their needs were small, their means were reliable, and the gap between the two was filled with something you almost never have enough of. Time. So what did they do with it? They did not lie around doing nothing. That is the mistake your mind wants to make, because your mind has been trained to see unstructured time as empty time. But their days were full. They were just full of a different kind of thing. They talked. Enormously. Anthropologists who lived among foraging groups describe conversation as almost the central activity of daily life. Long, winding, gossiping, arguing, joking conversations that could last for hours. This was not idle chatter. In a world with no written records, talk was how you tracked who was trustworthy, who owed whom, what happened in the next valley, and how the world worked. Your social knowledge was your survival technology, and you maintained it by talking, endlessly, to the people around you. They rested, openly and without guilt. Naps in the heat of the day were normal. The idea that resting while the sun is up is a moral failure. The idea that makes you feel a flicker of shame lying down on a Tuesday afternoon would have made no sense to them at all. And they made things. Not on an assembly line, and not for a wage. They carved, they beaded, they told stories, they sang, they danced through the night. The oldest art we have ever found, the paintings deep in the caves of Europe, the tiny carved figures older than agriculture itself, were made by people with exactly this kind of time. You cannot spend 40,000 years painting the walls of caves if every hour is a fight to keep from dying. Now, you might be tempted to think the Jew/Hoansi were an exception, one unusual group in one unusual desert. So consider the Hadza. The Hadza live in northern Tanzania, and they are one of the last populations on Earth still living primarily by hunting and gathering. An anthropologist named Frank Marlowe spent years among them. and his findings echoed Lee's almost exactly. The Hadza spend only a few hours a day acquiring food. Their work is not frantic. It is woven through with rest, with talk, with children playing underfoot, with no hard line between the day's labor and the day's life. And then something even stranger emerged when a scientist named Hermann Pontzer went to study Hadza bodies directly. Pontzer expected the Hadza, who move constantly, walking miles each day, to burn far more energy than a sedentary office worker. It seemed obvious. They are so active. But when he actually measured their total daily energy expenditure, he found something that reads almost like a paradox. The Hadza burn roughly the same number of calories per day as you do, sitting at your desk. Their bodies had quietly adjusted, spending their energy differently, not more. The lesson buried in that data is unsettling. All your extra sitting, all your saved effort, all the labor your machines do so your body does not have to, has not freed your body from anything. It has just left the energy somewhere else, humming with nowhere to go. That restless feeling in your legs at the end of a still day is an ancient animal that was built to move, wondering why it didn't. So here's the twist. The hunter-gatherers were not the deprived ones. You are. They were rich in the one currency that actually runs out. Time that belonged to them. Unhurried hours, spent with people they had known their entire lives, doing work that ended when it was done and did not follow them home, because there was no home to follow them to and no boss to send it. The scarcity you feel, the sense that there is never enough of the day, is not the natural condition of your species. It is a very recent invention. So what happened? Where did all that time go? It went into wheat. About 12,000 years ago, humans began to farm. And this is the moment everything you think of as progress quietly turned into a trap. Farming produced more food per acre, yes. But it demanded something the forager never gave. It demanded everything. You had to plow, plant, weed, guard, harvest, and store. You had to stay in one place.